Hello, welcome to Assistive Technology and Universal Design for Learning. My name is Jerry Schaefer, and I'm an educational consultant with the Capital Area Intermediate Unit in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My colleague, Shauna Montgomery, and I have developed the following module as part of the Tier 1 Assistive Technology process. This process was designed to build capacity in assistive technology within our local school districts and cooperating agencies. Each module is designed to provide information about best practice in assistive technology. So let's get started with assistive technology and universal design for learning. Let's begin with what is universal design as a general concept. I've broken down the definition a little bit so we can talk about it. Universal design as a general concept means design and composition of an environment. So what do we mean by environment? Well, in the case of universal design as a general concept, it usually means a building, a workplace, a piece of equipment. It can even mean a computer environment. Again, universal design is design and composition of an environment so that it can be accessed. And accessed means understood and used to the greatest extent possible. Now, this part of the definition builds in a lot of flexibility because the greatest extent possible could be different for every user. By all people, and what does all mean? It means everyone, regardless of age, size, ability, or disability. When we look at the definition of universal design as a general concept, it generally means that you're going to build or design something with everyone in mind. So before you build or design, you are thinking through what everyone needs to have access. The best way to understand universal design as a general concept is to look at some examples. So in this first example, we see a set of stairs that leads to the entrance of a building. Within those stairs, we can see that a ramp has been built, and there are also handrails provided in several locations. I really like this as an example of universal design for many reasons. First, I think the main entrance of the building is universally designed and everyone enters the building in the same way. Many times ramps are added to the building after it's been built and they're put in the side or the back entrance, and this can make people feel marginalized or uninvited. So I really like that everyone can enter the same way. Secondly, the ramp serves a couple different purposes. One obvious purpose would be for a wheelchair to access the building, but there are other reasons for this ramp. Maybe you're a parent with a child in a stroller. Maybe you have a small child who can't negotiate the stairs. Maybe you have an injury or you're using crutches. Or maybe you're a senior adult who tires easily on stairs and prefers a ramp. If you like using the stairs, you're welcome to do so. I'll even go one step further and talk about athletes who use stairs like these for exercise. They may come in the evening and run up and down the stairs using the ramps to work on agility. So this design really addresses people of all ranges of abilities. The next example is a smaller example. This door handle was designed as a lever instead of a round knob. For people with fine motor control issues, round knobs can be difficult to open. So they can be difficult for children to open, or again, for senior adults to open. But this handle's designed so you just have to push down, which makes it easier for everyone to use. Think about an emergency. If someone needs to get into or out of the building and the knobs are not universally designed, it could be a life or death situation. That makes it very serious and makes this type of design really important. Okay, so then the last example is one that we've all seen, which are curb cutouts. These cutouts are designed so we can get easily from the sidewalk to the street and cross the street safely. The curb cutouts were originally designed for a wheelchair user, or in this case, visually impaired individuals, so they don't trip on the step. The idea here is that even though these curb cutouts may be necessary and useful for people with disabilities, they can be used by everyone. Again, parents with strollers use them, someone pulling a cart or luggage can use them. Someone who has difficulty negotiating one step may find it easier to use the cutout. It's much safer for them when they're coming off the curb and onto the street. They're all great examples of universal design in our environment because they're all designed to help everyone. Now that we know what universal design means, how do we apply that to our educational practice? Well, universal design for learning takes the general concept of universal design and uses it as a framework to guide educational practice. It means asking important questions before you plan your lesson, and it means having the mindset that all students can learn. In other words, presuming competence. It's not one size fits all. We are not suggesting that you have to create the perfect lesson plan. It means being flexible within your lesson plan to accommodate and modify for students. So universal design for learning is actually a very big concept with a lot of moving parts. And I found this video narrated by David Rose. He's with the CAST Center. And I think it's a great synopsis of universal design. So I'm going to play that for you right now.
In many classrooms, the focus is on an illusory average student. Many curricula are designed for that student. Cognitive neuroscience has shown us that there really isn't an average student anywhere, and that's why it's an illusory student. Universal design for learning, though, is particularly focused on making sure that we get those students who have been marginalized, for whom that designing for the average student has never worked well. And that certainly means students who have been struggling, students for whom English is not their first language, students with disabilities. They've been typically marginalized by this illusory average curriculum. Secondly, though, students at the other margins, the students who are called gifted and talented, are also students who have been underserved by this mainstream curriculum. They haven't been challenged. They're bored. They're underserved as well. UDL is a framework based in cognitive neurosciences for designing learning experiences that work across a wide spectrum of learners. Its main purpose is to make sure that everybody is a successful learner and reaches what we call being an expert learner. That is, they know a lot, they know how to do a lot, and they love learning and want to do it more. The key to universal design for learning is that we're designing learning experiences which from the beginning are designed to be universal and to make sure everybody learns. And that design is primarily based on the power to be very flexible in allowing choices, in allowing different paths, in allowing for things to be presented in different ways so that we reach those other two things, universal and everybody learns. The three principles of universal design for learning come from careful analysis of what learning really is, and particularly the research that has been done by thousands of other researchers in cognitive science, cognitive neuroscience, neuropsychology, which have carefully looked at what comprises learning, how does learning really work, and what are its differences among individual learners. From that work, we've abstracted out three simple principles that are involved in any learning situation. How does the learner pick up information? How do they express and act on that information? And how are they engaged by the learning situation? There are three broad principles. The first has to do with how we present information to the learner. And we talk about multiple means of representation. As it turns out, there's no one way that we can present information so to be successful for everyone to learn it. So we talk about multiple means of representation. So in UDL, we talk about providing multiple representations so that we're sure everyone will be able to make sense of the symbols, the language, the drawings, and so on. Take, for example, in teaching mathematics, it's typically very strong to use multiple representations, not just the symbolic expression of the numbers, but manipulables, things that the children can operate on and see directly and perceptually rather than their symbolic form. So that's a great example of providing multiple representation, both the symbolic number and a physical manipulative. The second principle is provide multiple means of action and expression. And that takes into account the fact that students vary greatly in how they express what they know, how they can act skillfully, how they can communicate in language or in drawing and so on. And students differ widely, so we say we must provide multiple means of expression over the course of our teaching and learning. The third principle is multiple means of engagement. And in many ways, it's the most important principle. If we don't engage students in learning, don't make it important to them, make them motivated for it, then none of the other forms of representation or expression will be that important. Within Universal Design for Learning, when we look at a curriculum, we think of 4 main components, and each of them need to be universally designed. The first component is, what are its goals? How do we translate standards into things that are important to do in the classroom? Secondly, what are the materials that are going to be in that classroom? Everything from a chalkboard to a textbook to a workbook to something on the wall. Are these materials key to learning? And if so, are they universally designed for learning? Third, the methods. How does the teacher go about teaching when she or he is working at helping students learn? Does she set up collaborative groups? Does she lecture? Does she provide experiences out in the world? And lastly, and very important to Universal Design for Learning, is the means of assessment. How are we sure that learning really occurs? When we began our work, we, like most people, were focused on learners who were doing poorly, who looked like they had disabilities. Over time, we began to change our focus because we could see when we were in classrooms that the classrooms were in fact disabling, that they were not designed properly to ensure that every child would succeed. And we began more and more to see that the curriculum itself was disabled, and that the work of the Universal Design for Learning guidelines is to reduce the disabilities in the curriculum itself so that more students succeed, more students have optimum challenges, and come out as expert learners in the end.
So, as you've heard in the video, there are several principles and many ideas supporting Universal Design for Learning. For Tier 1 instruction in our classroom, we're going to focus on the 3 main principles: representation, action and expression, and engagement. What we'd like for you to be thinking about is, what do you already have that will assist you in these 3 areas? For example, with representation, you might be thinking about specialized video or audio equipment like a whiteboard or headsets. Maybe students need visuals or enlarged print. With action and expression, you could be thinking about how the student is going to express what they know. Are they going to draw a picture, verbally answer questions, or use a communication board? What materials will they need, and can they use those materials? And then lastly, how are your students going to participate in the activities you plan? What will keep them interested and motivated? These are the design elements we would like you to be thinking about when you set up your classroom. At this point in the presentation, you may be asking yourself, what is the effect of Universal Design for Learning in my classroom? And I think that's a great question. So Universal Design for Learning provides flexibility. It's flexible for the teacher, the staff, and the students. It also reduces barriers. So sometimes when we're planning our lesson, we inadvertently create barriers as part of the lesson. And if you're following the Universal Design for Learning principles, it really reduces those barriers. And when you add flexibility and reduction of barriers together, you get higher achievement for all students. And that is really our goal. So what does Universal Design for Learning mean in the Tier 1 AT process? What we're asking you to do at this point in the process is to look and see what you already have available for all students in your classroom. What types of equipment do you have that will complement the 3 principles of Universal Design for Learning? Do you have switches or low-tech communication devices or communication boards? Maybe you have some iPads. Maybe you have some pencil grips or special writing paper. The idea here is to look in your closet, pull out some equipment, and see how it matches up with student needs. Okay, so I hope that you've got a general idea and a general concept of Universal Design for Learning, and you can make some connections to assistive technology. Thanks for taking the time to complete the module Assistive Technology and Universal Design for Learning. Please remember to complete the reflection questions and review the extra materials provided. If you have any questions about this module or you'd like to discuss your role in the AT process, please feel free to contact me or my colleague, Shauna Montgomery. This is our web address, and you can find our contact information on that website. Please remember that assistive technology consultants are available for in-person training and consultation with your team. Thank you and have a great day.